people are just ready for a fight.
This is the equivalent of how you kick off a bar fight in 2025. You drop a new logo, new campaign.
Right, except for now it's happening just on the internet.
Yeah, there's so little glass broken. It's really a shame.
This is By Design from the Fast Company Podcast Network. I'm Liz Stinson.
And I'm Mark Wilson.
We have a big show for you today, so let's get straight to it.
Joining us later is Chief Product Officer for Figma, Yuhki Yamashita, to talk about the company's super successful IPO and what comes next.
We'll also debate the best and worst new designs, but first, the news.
The news.
Mark, we have got to talk about President Trump's big announcement that he's establishing a national design studio.
Yeah, this came in an executive order where Trump charged the studio with overhauling the federal government's websites and digital services. He also appointed Airbnb co-founder Joe Gebbia to lead the office. This is all part of an initiative Trump is calling America by Design, apparently quite inspired by our podcast.
Sounds familiar.
The order paints the government's digital offerings as ugly, difficult to use, inefficient, expensive. I think those are probably all pretty true. Basically, the order reads, quote, "It is time to fill the digital potholes across our nation."
I am not going to argue with this, Mark. If we want to use the metaphor, the road is quite bumpy. But this is not the first time a group of idealistic technologists and designers have tried to fix the country's broken digital system.
We've really seen this globally as design firms partner with governments to try to make things clearer, more efficient. And even here in the US, you can draw a pretty direct line between the USDS, the US Digital Service, established under Obama, and this. Joe Biden had similar plans to improve the user experience for government websites early in his administration. But, of course, Trump is going to do this in his own way. He really wants to cut down on design costs and use more standardized designs on public-facing websites.
Right. After the announcement, Gebbia said that he wanted to make the government services to be as satisfying to use as the Apple Store. Beautifully designed, great user experience, run on modern software. I think that's a really important thing for the government to do. This is, in theory, something that needs to happen. And I'm not sure the USDS, while they did make some notable improvements, I'm not sure holistically they really got there.
Exactly that. They made some really important resources, but, we never really saw it scale. And if we were just to use Gebbia's metaphor of sort of the Apple Store, I think we could all agree we aren't at the Apple Store level of government design just yet.
Right. So anyone who's ever used a government website, which I think is the vast majority of Americans, know that U.S. government websites are really hard to use. They don't make it easy, right? So I think that this seems to be at least a philosophical offshoot of the work Doge was doing. And that's not entirely surprising, given Gebbia was part of that effort. I think we should note that Doge itself replaced the USDS when it was established. And, the USDS, as you noted, was tasked with doing a lot of what this new design studio is going to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Gebbia himself is one of the most successful designer founders of our age, right? Airbnb was really part of this, appification of the iPhone to actually offer new services and open up really large new business initiatives. Since then, he's had a few different things he's done, but, he's also backed the Eames Institute of Infinite Curiosity, highlighting the contributions of Ray and Charles Eames, two of the most impactful designers in American history. He's also been a notable Democrat who's shifted right over the past few years, like a lot of people in the Valley.
I think it's been really interesting to see the response from the design community so far. There's a big question around talent. And one of the things that President Trump said in his executive order is that this is a chance to build out a really great talent pool of people who are going to come work in the government. And there's a big outstanding question for me as to who is going to be joining this initiative, just given the complicated political dynamics surrounding it. It's a worthwhile effort, obviously, but it is a complicated political and cultural conversation to have right now.
Yeah, 100%. If you just look at who's offered support to Gebbia, A24, former Adobe executive Scott Belsky. You have Carl Ledbetter, who is a partner and head of design at Microsoft. You have sort of people who run design studios all across the Valley kind of upvoting this decision. So I think it's really interesting to see that community response, and I'm curious what we'll do for recruiting. Look, I've talked to Gebbia a few times over the years. I've reached out hoping he'll discuss his plans, like what this actually means, and I guess we'll see.
To me, though, this is a bigger thing than just redoing some websites. And it's not so surprising that Trump would be the one to roll this out. He's a real estate developer. He prides himself on building beautiful things, even if his version of beauty is not necessarily my own. So this is not just about websites. They also reference physical design and architecture in the executive order. And Trump has been on a makeover spree. We've seen him really remake the White House in his own image.
Get that gilding. You're talking about the gilding.
It's the new Gilded Age, yes. Including a $200 million renovation of a ballroom in the White House. He recently tore up the Rose Garden lawn and replaced it with Mar-a-Lago-esque patio with umbrellas and everything. He hung his mugshot right outside the Oval Office.
I mean, yeah, even going back to his first term, we saw Trump sign an executive order around sort of the type of architecture, used in government buildings, where he really doubled down on neoclassicism. And, even that new ballroom that you mentioned is being done in the neoclassic style to sort of match the White House. But I think it's bigger than just making things, quote unquote, more beautiful. He's really terraforming the country in his own image. I'm really curious to see where this goes next, Liz.
This is going to be a story that we are going to continue to follow because Trump is not done redesigning America. So, we'll just keep an eye on it.
All right, Liz, for our next item, an equally important topic. I know you know where I'm going with this. The Cracker Barrel logo redesign controversy.
Big, big drama in the design world and in the political world, it turns out.
Cracker Barrel is a nostalgia-based brand. This is the libs ruining it and corporate pandering.
I'll admit I saw this last week initially, and I was just like, Cracker Barrel has a new logo. People don't like it. It's like, oh, okay, yeah.
That happens.
Yeah, that happens. That's pretty much every logo drop ever. But the story just won't die, right? It feels like one of those things that keeps snowballing, and I we'll see where it goes next. But for anybody who hasn't seen it, this new logo dropped as part of CEO Julie Feltz-Massino's $700 million company makeover meant to modernize the restaurants and bring in younger faces.
I heard she's also going to change the decor, which is shocking to me.
I saw one of the samples. It's like something that you get in Architectural Digest, like some kind of consultant flew down from Manhattan to say, no.
It's like farmhouse chic. You're missing the whole point. These people don't even go to your restaurant. They don't eat this food.
Right.
Okay, so let me paint this picture for you in case you haven't been following this. The new logo removed the barrel and a mascot known as Old Timer or Uncle Herschel.
Good old Uncle Hersch.
I had no idea his name was Uncle Herschel. Great to know. But anyway, the new logo is now only a word mark reading Cracker Barrel. And I want to just say that this font does not read progressive to me. If the font could be progressive, I don't think it can be. This one is not progressive.
No, it isn't. I mean, it does look a little bit sort of retro historical like the original typeface is, but, it is very much on trend with this great flattening of logos, right, where we get rid of any images and it's just this word mark. And it's become, progressive or not, a really big political talking point. Donald Trump Jr. tweeted, WTF is wrong with Cracker Barrel. They've been accused by some of doing this alongside DEI efforts. Yeah, it became a really big right-wing thing. But look, it wasn't just right-wing criticism. Then we saw a pile on later in the week where the Democrats came around and just said, we hate this too on X.
I want to just say I was on vacation when all of this happened, blissfully unaware that there was some Cracker Barrel drama happening on the internet.
That's what you get for going to the beach. That's what you get.
No, it's an extra prize.
The universe had to sort of write your relaxation with the counterbalance, which is the Cracker Barrel logo. Look, this is sort of the weirdest non sequitur political fight that's happened in a logo in a while. But I will just say, it's affecting their business a lot. After this logo hit, they lost nearly $100 million in market cap. And the stock is still trading down by almost 10%, even a week after.
I think it shows that culture wars really do have a business impact, even if it's completely nonsensical. And I can acknowledge that logos are great fodder for the culture wars, right?
100%.
We've seen this before, and it happened back in 2020 a couple of times. There were a few examples of companies redesigning or renaming themselves that really gave, I think, specifically the right a lot of ammo. So first, there was Land of Lakes, the butter. They removed the image of the Native American woman from its packaging. So then it was simply Land of Lakes and a lake. To me, makes a lot of sense, right? But that was a big deal. That was something that people were really upset about.
To me, as a significant butter buyer, it made sense.
Yeah, fine. And then there was the Aunt Jemima rebrand. That was also in 2020. It came after the George Floyd murder. And people were really upset about the Aunt Jemima logo, saying that it portrayed Black women in a very stereotypical and racist way. So they rebranded. They took away that image. They rebranded to Pearl Milling Company. And the right was really upset about that, too. Have you ever eaten at Cracker Barrel?
I mean, this is what to me is lost in the whole logo controversy, is that Cracker Barrel is just terrible. I mean, it's just like the restaurant, I don't know how you fuck up eggs, but somehow Cracker Barrel fucks up eggs.
And it's funny because people want to claim it as white culture. That's what this is about, right?
Yeah, that is not my culture.
That's not my culture. I make very good scrambled eggs.
Superb eggs. I add so much butter. They're really fluffy. I do a real slow sort of, like the slow, soft scramble.
Slow and low.
Yeah, exactly. There's no other way to do it. Let them steam.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Cracker Barrel, not a great restaurant. I think what's interesting here is that it feels like a foothold, right? It's a foothold for people to get upset about something. It feels almost related to the Sydney Sweeney thing.
I was about to say, it feels kind of similar to the Sydney Sweeney thing.
People are just ready for a fight.
This is the equivalent of how you kick off a bar fight in 2025.
Exactly.
You drop a new logo, new campaign, and just let it go.
Right. Except for now it's happening just on the internet.
Yeah. There's so little glass broken. It's really a shame.
In another food-related segment, sure to start a bar fight, meat is back.
Meat is back.
Did it actually ever go away?
Oh, it did. It did.
No, but in all seriousness, this was a big month for meat. The latest victory for carnivores came when New York's 11 Madison Park added meat back to its menu after 4 years of only offering vegan food.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really big moment. The restaurant did the impossible back in 2022 by retaining its 3-star Michelin rating after switching to an all plant-based menu. But Chef Daniel Hum said the vegan menu was excluding people, that it wasn't really part of what he saw as hospitality.
Right, namely people who wanted to eat meat. He also said this was a financial decision. Hum told the New York Times, quote, "It's hard to get 30 people for a corporate dinner to come to a plant-based restaurant." Keep in mind that this restaurant charges people $365 for a prefix meal, and that's without the wine. Right.
It's totally true.
It's true. I actually don't know what it costs to eat there with the wine, and I don't really want to know. But this being said, I think people really equate meat with value. Just think about what tends to be the most expensive thing on the menu. It's usually meat, right? So asking people to pay that for plants, I don't know that culture is there yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, plants are expensive. Anyone who goes to the farmer's market knows that, this wasn't necessarily a budget-minded move, in the first place for 11 Madison Park. But I actually get Hum's point in that, they're probably trying to woo all these stockbrokers to come for these big parties. And then, they sit down and they see, a bunch of, shredded carrot, and they're just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, no, an artichoke? Come on. No, but I think Hum is reading the room, right? I mean, people are really into protein, into meat right now.
Yeah, no, we are protein-obsessed people. Turn on any of the podcast bros, you'll hear all about it. And there's a whole lot of data to back it up. In 2024, 61% of consumers increased their protein uptake. This year, Bain & Company reported that 44% of Americans want to still increase their protein take further. And that's a 10-point jump from 2024. And, I think we both agree there's a lot of reasons for this. Even if you just look at current fitness trends, like strength training is pretty much the standard now. It's been growing inside and out of gyms for years, and it's particularly popular with millennials and Gen Z, even if that's not necessarily the primary motivator behind 11 Madison Park.
Right. Yeah. Everybody who's lifting wants to go straight to 11 Madison Park afterwards.
I got it down 12 courses.
Right. No, but protein is getting shoved into just about everything these days. David bars having a big moment. Starbucks protein cold foams. I know you love it, Mark.
Love it.
Khloe Kardashian is selling protein popcorn now. Mark, did you hear about the launch of something called Man cereal?
I only saw the headline Man cereal. I did not partake.
Well, let me tell you. No, this is a cereal that has 15 to 16 grams of protein. It has 2.5 grams of creatine, which, I don't even know what creatine is.
You should take creatine, actually. You want 5 grams a day, by the way.
Oh my God, I am way behind. But this cereal has a ton of protein, basically no carbs or sugar. I don't know why you don't just eat an omelet if that's what you're looking for, but CPG is in its protein phase, and I think this is disconnected from what happened at 11 Madison Park, but it feels connected all the same, right? It's part of this bigger trend.
The greater protein meat matrix. And I think we should get into that more. I mean, it's really interesting. I don't know if you saw the Beyond Meat rebrand. Beyond Meat, one of the original big meat alternatives, is now just Beyond. And I think that's interesting because it's like they ceded this ground that they can't challenge meat, that they are just this other thing. And that's even going to play out in their product line, which will be less one-to-one burgers that are made vegan and more things based upon simple ingredients. Fava beans, potato protein, water, psyllium husk will make up their new Beyond ground.
When you say Beyond ground, is it not going to be shaped in, I guess, the shape of a hamburger anymore or a hot dog?
It's just like a ground protein.
Delicious.
I think it's more like this is largely Beyond, I think, responding to criticisms that they were an ultra-processed food, criticisms that I think were born from the very clever meat industry. But I think it's another point of evidence that meat alternatives and veganism is kind of losing right now, right? Like the tick and the talk has happened and now meat is back.
But think about what Impossible did, right? JKR rebranded Impossible. They went for a bright red brand.
Blood red brand.
Right. To really evoke the idea that this is a meat alternative. So, it's not out. I mean, not everyone is taking that tact.
That's true. I guess we will see how it plays out for Beyond and Impossible, and that storyline will continue to be fascinating. But at the same time, everybody's just eating meat.
Yeah. You were vegan for a while, right, Mark?
Mostly vegan for about a decade. And so that was my cheat. I said 1 to 2 days a week, I'll have meat with a meal, but otherwise the other stuff, it's, hardcore. And I'm not, I guess, immune to the pressures of culture. I've since just in the past couple of months added meat back to not most meals, I guess a lot of meals. I'm a meat eater now. And I think there are a few reasons. One, if you don't eat meat, I do think it's really hard to get high protein numbers. And I'm part of big protein. I do want a decent amount of protein. Feels a little easier to, I wouldn't say bulk, but have lean protein in my body. It's not happening on garbanzo beans. I'm back on meat. Thank you, Daniel Hum.
Yeah, you are the target audience here.
I am.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Our last news item this week is perhaps the biggest design news of the summer, and that is the Figma IPO.
Yes, Figma. It's funny. Every designer listening to this podcast knows exactly what Figma is. And any non-designer who's stumbled upon us or has heard about this IPO is probably just what the hell is going on? But, 95% of Fortune 500 companies use Figma software to collaborate on digital products as they develop, apps, websites, and pretty much anything else you can imagine. Its customers include 13 million designers, developers, and staff in between. And that was enough to win over Wall Street in a really successful IPO.
So we're going to talk some nerdy numbers first. So on July 31st, the company had a big debut on the New York Stock Exchange. The IPO was set to start at $33 a share, but that price immediately shot up as the stock started to trade. At its peak the day after IPOing, it reached nearly $143 a share, making Figma worth something like $60 billion for a moment. And then 2 weeks after the IPO, Figma was trading at just under $78 a share. So it's under its peak, but it's still more than double that $33 a share initial price. And I think it was just a massive win for the company.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the stock prices always chill out a little bit after IPO, but it values the company at about $38 billion, and that's about twice what Figma was offered by Adobe when it had tried to acquire Figma, just a few years ago.
Yeah, so this is not a stock price show, right? We are a design show. So really what we're trying to do here is understand where Figma is going after this initial public fervor has been so hot. This is a company that, to your point, Mark, a lot of designers know, a lot of people outside of design and development probably do not know. But if Figma has its way, it wants to be a company for anybody in the creative process who is touching digital work. Dylan Field, the CEO of Figma, said that design is everyone's business. That was the IPO tagline. And I think that's really what they're trying to prove right now.
I think truly with Figma, what's interesting is they have become a sort of Kleenex level brand of design, right? Like professional designers across industries are using Figma to collaborate in different ways. And now I think, Wall Street wanted a piece of that. And the question is like, how much can they expand and grow revenue from this foothold? And I don't think that the answer is completely obvious, honestly. Figma sort of disrupted the industry just a few years ago to get here. And now we have this new wave of AI tools. And all of a sudden, you have Figma saying, we can own the future of design and development by infusing AI into our product. And you have every other big company kind of saying the same thing in this space, along with a bunch of hungry startups from, around the world that all have access to top of the line LLMs and other sort of AI systems. So I get why it was a really big launch. I think in 5 to 10 years, really it's anyone's game. And that's why this IPO has actually been interesting to watch.
Fortunately, we don't have to discuss all of this alone because joining us today is Yuhki Yamashita. He's the Chief Product Officer at Figma, where he oversees the product and design teams. We'll be right back for our interview after the break. We are here with Yuhki Yamashita. He is the Chief Product Officer at Figma, where he oversees the product and design teams. Yuhki, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So it's been a really big month for Figma. The company went public. It was one of the biggest and most anticipated IPOs of the year. You all had a major celebration at the New York Stock Exchange, which looked really fun. But what I want to know is, how did the Figma team celebrate that night? Where did you go? What was the atmosphere like? Had it shifted at all? Had the vibe shifted at all?
It was definitely a big moment for us. We actually had a bit of a block party spilling right out of the New York Stock Exchange, where we took over. We brought people in our community, our employees together. We had music. We had people trying out our products. We brought a lot of swag. There are a lot of Figma t-shirts and umbrellas all over the city right now. And so that was kind of the way we wanted to celebrate. And I think it was a great way to get everyone together.
Was it weird going back to work afterward? Because, I mean, this IPO has been obviously hyped for the better part of a year.
Right. Well, if I'm being honest, half of our minds are still on work throughout the day because we actually decided to launch a bunch of new features that very day. And so we had a event that we called Release Notes, where we launched a bunch of new features for new products. So yeah, making sure that was going well was something that was on top of our minds already. So
you're like watching the stock ticker.
Yeah.
What was the thinking there to do a bunch of releases on the day that you're IPOing? I mean, there had to have been a lot of conversation around why you want to do something like that.
Okay, yeah. Just to create a distraction for us, right? Just kidding. I think really we wanted to signal to everyone that at the end of the day, what matters is that we're making our products better, right? And those releases were a reflection of all the feedback that we've been getting, especially around our new products. And we wanted to show that that remains true and that will continue to remain true as a public company.
I mean, I think it's so challenging for any company to go public. And on one hand, it's a no-brainer. Figma is worth so much more than it was before going public. It's worth more than it would have been if it were acquired by Adobe. Really, this has been the biggest sort of design company launch in a really long time. And I'm really challenged to find great comparisons. On the other, I'm wondering how it feels right now, because it does feel like Wall Street is putting unparalleled pressure onto private companies. And so, like, do you feel the same right now, I guess, working on the product as you did just a couple of weeks ago? And I'm curious, like, how you're thinking about it going forward, because that the quarterly pressure is sort of there now.
Well, when we think about things like valuation, share price, those are moments in time, right? And one of what we focus on is our vision and our future. And so, no matter what's happening on that side, our vision has been really consistent. How do we help teams go from idea to product as fast as possible and put design right in the center of that? And of course, it's important to build a healthy business as well as part of that. But, when I think about my day-to-day, it's really just talking to customers and building the best products possible in service of that goal.
Dylan Field, CEO, really launched some interesting remarks around when you went public, talking about sort of design being everything now, right? From sort of product to brand, just to your perception. And I'm wondering how you're, encapsulating that vision, and I guess what your North Star is over the next 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, we're living in this world where it's so easy for people to create something, right? And that's really wonderful. We've lowered the floor. We've brought more people into the process of building products, creating things. But in that world, what's really going to differentiate a good experience from a great experience is craft and design, how thoughtful you were around the end user experience, how much you pushed it something further. And so for us, it's all about, okay, how do we actually provide the tools necessary to help you do that? And how do we keep elevating the craft, especially in a world where people have access to more? And so, yeah, putting design in the center of that, taking a bigger definition of what design even means is really what we're focused on.
Well, what does design even mean in this moment to you and to the larger Figma team?
We think that design is actually, when you think about what it is, at the end of the day, is a form of problem solving, right? And it's really about challenging the status quo. One of the favorite phrases that we like to use internally, especially in the beginning of the process, is what if, right? What if, or how might we? And these are provocations that help you think bigger than you might normally, given the constraints that exist. And so I think design is about pushing some of those boundaries, putting people and humans first as part of that, your user first. And then, I think there's a lot of kind of conceptions about what design looks like. But our belief is that design now takes different forms. Of course, it's about drawing things. And we believe that we have a tool that's really wonderful for that. But also, it's about coding. It's about prompting. And those are valid ways of design as well. And we're bringing those mechanisms into platforms so that anyone can use any medium to design to push their ideas forward.
I mean, the vibe coding moment we're in right now, I think was a little bit unexpected in some ways, but also feels in many ways like this end game of AI, where you can tell a machine what you want and it just magically creates it. And obviously that's something Figma's adopted a bit, right? With Figma Make, it's something a lot of your competitors have adopted at the same time. And I'm curious how you're thinking about it internally right now, because you can obviously spin something up for prompts and you can do that better and better. But how much of your focus, I guess, is on those discrete controls to really get that sort of fine tuning and, I guess, originality that you alluded to earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much our focus, actually. The idea that you can one shot your way to a final product, I think, is fairly unrealistic. Or if that's what your final product is, that's fine, but it's not going to be the best product out there, right?
I mean, it seems like an illusion right now, right? That promise a bit.
Yes, and I'm sure that even that act will get better over time. But in that world, how do you actually build a product that stands out more? And that's this obsessive iteration and saying, hey, how could this part be better? How could this user journey be more special? And that's what, I think is going to help companies stand out. That's the kind of tooling that we want to provide to make iteration easier, no matter what medium you want to use.
I'm also just thinking about how 2/3 of your customers are not designers, at least not by self-definition or trait or discipline. And so when you're talking about, the vibe coding thing, that's just one aspect of creating a product, right? Like, it sounds like Figma is trying to touch basically like every aspect of the product creation journey, from like ideation to marketing to coding to the actual design process. And I guess the question there is, how does that influence or change the way that you are thinking about what you're going to focus on next when you have that big of a net to cast?
What we're realizing is that all of these different stages of the product development processes are beginning to collapse. And the importance of us covering these different aspects is actually because more and more we're getting to a state where you can go from an idea to a shipped product or a viable product really, really quickly. And part of it is, how do we actually support all those different activities and help you go between all these different stages in the smoothest way possible? So let me explain. Like, for example, this year we've shipped a product which we call Figma Sites, and it allows you to take a design and actually publish it and put it all the way into production.
So when you get to that point where the person doesn't have to leave Figma, is that realistic? Is that is that your North Star eventually, that someone could sign up for a Figma account, their organization or individual, and from there, they basically never have to leave Figma to do their job? Is that the future you're looking at?
Well, I think our North Star is that journey feels as seamless as possible. And, we know that people use a bunch of different tools, and it's not necessarily, our goal to say, hey, like, you shouldn't use other tools. In fact, we've had a platform that, has been about these integrations and bringing a lot of context from other tools into Figma, or taking some context from Figma out to other tools. And that remains important. But all of this is in service of removing some of the boundaries or the artificial boundaries that exist, right? A lot of times, when you think about going from an idea to product, the hardest part is that ideas get lost in translation. You had a few words and you wanted to put it down as a drawing. Something got lost in translation, as you hop between tools, or as you hand off these ideas between humans or a person and an AI, for example. And similarly, a lot of what happens today is people draw a lot of mocks and it looks beautiful in the designs, but then when it ends up in users' hands, there's a consideration and production that they hadn't considered, right? Oh, I didn't design for Android, or oh, I didn't design for the screen size, or whatever that might be. And, it doesn't end up being the product that they hoped it would be. And so removing these translations errors, right, is important. And as part of that, it's removing some of these kind of hurdles or jumps between products. And that's what we want to solve for.
I do feel like, though, we are in this moment of, for whatever the reason and sort of motivation, right, that we're seeing a mass consolidation of these creative products, where Figma is increasingly doing more like soup to nuts, like work across design development. Canva's increasingly doing more sort of soup to nuts work across all development. And it's my belief that user expectations are just higher now too, right? Like, once one company can sort of do it all, I feel like everybody has to kind of do it all to create that cohesive experience you're talking about, where you don't feel like, oh, 3/4 into my workflow, all of a sudden I have to like jump out of this other app, use this other interface, get another login for half of the company, and sort of do all of that other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we learned that from even products like Figma Slides, right? One of the reasons we put like design mode on it is we didn't want people to have to go back to a tool to go edit the mock that they put in the slide. Like, we wanted to be able to let you be able to edit it right there and there, right? So yeah, I think it is true that the expectation people have around the seamlessness or the ability to just edit everything in place has gotten higher. That's probably true.
Has that expectation changed with the introduction of more AI features into Figma products as well? I just sort of imagine, I don't know how many years in the future this might be, but there's going to be an element of like AI handling certain tasks for you and making decisions on your behalf, and sort of contextualizing, like creating these moments of like interaction between these various apps. And I just wonder, how futuristic, how far looking are you thinking when you're coming up with new products, and how much is that top of mind for you right now?
Yeah. I mean, certainly we're thinking a lot about AI and the role of AI and how it can help both with the design process, with the handoff process, translating design into code, there's so many exciting applications for it. And really, we think of it as kind of an accelerant to the process. And in some cases, a collaborator, right? When I think about a product like Figma Make, it's almost like you're in there with a teammate and you're chatting with them and seeing how you can get to a product that's better. And then you're inviting other teammates into that conversation. And, I hope to be a platform where designers and product managers and engineers and agents are all talking and collaborating with each other.
I'm curious how you think about those AI modalities, right? Because Dylan Field mentioned how right now, I think he said AI is in its MS-DOS era, which is a really nice way of sort of packaging the prompts and sort of the prompting we've been doing. You just alluded to some agentic AI things, right? Where you could converse with an AI and maybe it takes a few actions on your behalf and you're a collaborator. But how much are you looking at sort of modalities outside of that? I mean, you talked about sort of tools and sort of pushing like what tool sets are. Are you looking at sort of, I guess, inventing things we haven't really seen yet outside of, creative AI as we know it?
I think we think a lot about the future of interfaces, the future of software. We also want to acknowledge our role as a platform that allows other teams to think about the future of software. And so we're excited to think about it in both directions, I would say. Right now, as Dylan said, you see the proliferation of chat AI everywhere. And chat has this really nice property where it's very easy to just put on top of any product right now, right? And also, it has some of these nice properties where the latency that exists today feels natural.
Oh, you're talking about versus like the GUI type AI design tools where you might like draw, a freehand sketch and then all of a sudden it makes it an anime character or something really high resolution. But you're saying that there's a little bit delay there that we forget about.
Right. So in a chat tool, I think there's a tolerance for a delay because it just is almost natural, right? It's almost like you're talking to a human and they have to think a little bit. And so the chat as a metaphor actually works really well based on, today's latency characteristics. If you have to wait a minute, if you have to wait a few seconds, like that's totally normal. But, as the technology evolves and maybe some of that latency is solved, I do expect that people are going to innovate on interfaces even more, which is really exciting.
How far can you roadmap right now? Like realistically, I'm curious how far your planned roadmap is, and then how far your more theoretical roadmap is, and how much you believe in that theory right now because AI is just moving so fast.
Yeah. I mean, pretty recently, Dylan was talking internally about, hey, we need to not do annual planning, or kind of think in these one-year cycles because we need to be responsive to everything that's happening. And even internally, there's more of a culture of prototyping and trying out new things. And, this week, actually, we're in the middle of Maker Week, which is kind of like our hack week that we have each year where people kind of explore completely new ideas and, play with technologies that are out there. So from that perspective, I think we are in a world where we can't be overly fixated on a particular roadmap that we set in the long term. But that being said, I think it's really important to set a North Star of where you want to head. And so that the problems you're trying to solve, those remain consistent throughout.
That North Star seems more theoretical in a way than something really literal that you're aiming for, though.
I think a little mix of both. We want to recognize that most of our users are trying to build software, right? And so insofar as that's true, it's our jobs to make it as easy as possible. Now, there may be some bunch of different ways to get there. And some of that, we want to be flexible around.
When we're talking about roadmaps and not being able to plan so far in the future, how has this changed the way you and your team works? Because I saw a video recently with the head of Shopify's design, and maybe you saw this, Yuhki, I don't know, it was going around the internet where he was like, I don't want to see a deck anymore. I want you to show me the thing, make the thing. We now have tools that allow us to simply make the thing that you want to tell me about as opposed to describing the thing that you want to do. And to what extent is that part of Figma's culture as well?
I mean, I think we've always been a show, not tell type of culture, but it's always felt a little aspirational. But now creating a prototype is so much easier, or creating something real is so much easier. So I tend to agree that the way you build products has to change. And in particular, I would say that there's like a few different changes. The first is you can actually now create something pretty high fidelity pretty quickly that's really believable, right? And in a previous world, you might have put forth these wireframes, then kind of slowly increase fidelity over time. And that's because creating high fidelity things took a lot of time. But now you can put like something that feels like the final product in front of your CEO, your users, and get feedback immediately. And if that idea doesn't work, you test it out and try something completely new. And so I think that changes things dramatically. And similarly, today, there's no excuse really for you not to make. Instead of giving feedback like, what if it could be this way? Or have you tried something like this? You could actually go and try that out yourself. And I think that's pretty liberating in some ways.
I do have a question around just, I guess, the future of what apps might look like. I mean, I feel like Figma really gets a peek behind the curtain of what is coming, what is interesting, and just sort of looking forward out towards the future. What are you excited about? Like, how is the way that we are going to be interacting with technology, interacting with apps, interacting with the web more broadly? How is that going to change, in your opinion?
Well, I can speak specifically more to software interfaces, and I'm really excited about a world where, these software is more dynamic, like much more dynamic, right? Like you can imagine interfaces that are being created on the fly that are personalized and relevant to you. Traditionally, it's been you have to go learn the software, and now the software can learn to adapt to you. And that kind of reversal of power dynamic is really interesting to me. It's also interesting as a tool builder to think about how we can help teams build for that kind of world as well.
I'm going to need a concrete example here to better understand what you mean.
Yeah, just tell us whatever you developed and that you haven't shown yet. You just describe that.
No, I just mean that, one of the classic debates that you often have on a product team would be what goes where. And, we talk about IA or information architecture. And we say, okay, well, this thing has to be buried here because, that's the taxonomy people are going to expect as they navigate through things. But, that's all under the assumption that we don't know what you want. Or, we have only a few permutations of products or of interfaces that are possible. But in a world where, you can have infinite permutations of interfaces, the product that we show you, Liz, and Mark, could look completely different, right? Because you're different human beings and have different needs, presumably. And so I think that is a kind of interesting world to think about. And designing for a world like that is interesting from our perspective as people building the tools.
Yeah, interfaces to design adaptive interfaces. So I do think that's super interesting to know that even Figma's putting a small stake in the ground that interfaces will be adaptive and different, because there's a lot of debate in the AI community about that right now. How much are you thinking about individualism and point of view of the designer right now and sort of articulating that, especially within the sea of AI tools that are very much trained on known entities and known ideas?
This has been a debate that actually has existed even before AI, because a big part of using Figma has been about design systems. And design systems is kind of essentially these building blocks that companies invest in to ensure that what designers create, what the product teams create, feel consistent and consistent with the brand. And I'll kind of break it down to a few things. One is, when you're building products for a brand with a bunch of different people, it is actually quite important to be reasonably consistent.
Yeah, this ain't art school, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And, there's definitely always kind of these cases where you're kind of like, what, are you just doing it differently just because? And a company has put a lot of thought into, well, we're doing it this way because we want a familiar pattern, or we're doing it this way because we've intentionally made it accessible in this way, and it defined their brand. And so from the perspective of kind of inside a given company, I actually think there's power to making sure that there's a level of consistency. But between companies, I think there should be differentiation, right? And we want to give every tool possible to let people express their brand in fun ways. And so, for example, one of the reasons we've been exploring tools like Figma Draw, for example, is just like, let's bring more humanity and organic design into our platform so that, people can express themselves not just with, rectangles and things that look generic, but with more texture, things that kind of allow people to differentiate the look and feel. So I'm hopeful that we can encourage more of that, but want to balance between kind of like individualism for the sake of individualism with kind of giving people the ability to express their brand in richer and richer ways.
I do think it's interesting, though, you framed this up as one company to another company, not one creative versus another creative. And so it does really feel like Figma's focus is on sort of, I guess, serving that corporate function first, like the sort of the corporate designer who is representing a brand that's worth a lot of money and sort of out of their hands versus that individual creative that I think the Adobe suite, for instance, was probably built upon.
Yeah. Well, I think we have different kinds of users for sure, right? And there are definitely people who are individuals who want to express themselves and don't need to use design systems and all of that goodness. And I guess what I would say is I have always considered our user to be the team. It's a group of people who come together to build something. And it's not just designers, it's product managers, engineers, and more. And so within that archetype, within that user, a team, I think it's important to give them the tools to stay on the same page and aligned and consistent. And that's something that we've focused on.
I also think it's interesting how you mentioned bringing in draw tools and sort of offering that, I guess, more finite creative set. And it just reminds me back to earlier in this conversation where we were talking about needing to do sort of more under one roof. And it really does feel like you're building that out in every direction. I mean, to some extent, do you feel like you need to sort of build an Adobe Suite-esque thing internally? We're seeing other companies do it, right? Like Canva obviously made a major acquisition of Affinity, and we know where that's going over the next 2 to 3 years, right? Where we're just going to see more and more of that baked in. Do you feel like you have to provide that? And I'm not asking this in a competitive way. I'm asking this in a way of just what the user expects and sort of demands of your platform.
Well, I think a company like Adobe, we respect them a lot, but they're also a very different company. We are a company that focuses on entire product teams, and a third of our users are actually engineers. And so it's important to keep giving designers and others the ability to express themselves, but just as important for us is to really think about, well, in a digital product context, like how does that actually translate into code, and how do we actually make it easier for engineers to...
Dev mode.
Exactly, dev mode and everything, And so I think we have to keep all of those types of users in mind. And when you look at some of the recent investments that we've been making, be it dev mode, be it our MCP server, all these things, they're actually in service of helping people make production-ready designs or, designs that actually can be turned into the final product.
We talked a lot about AI today. I'm sure you see a lot of early work and early models that the rest of the public doesn't see. And I'm curious, what do you feel like we know right now? Like, what are the knowns of AI? And then to you, over the next 1 to 2, 3 years, what are the sort of the unknowns? What are the sort of, the sort of gray spaces to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what we know about AI is that every day, every week, it's getting better.
I mean, GTP5 has some criticism, I will say. I think we might have seen a tiny dip there, but I get your point.
Fair. But, I think we're really excited because every single time there's a new update, it's an opportunity to make things faster, help, translate designs into products faster, So that's definitely felt like a constant. There's certainly unknowns as to how far it could go. There's certainly unknowns as to what are the creative bounds of it,
Do you feel like we're plateauing a little bit? I mean, there's a lot of people suggesting that, and it does feel a bit like maybe we are.
It's hard to say, right? Like, basically, the way I think about AI right now is it's kind of the average of averages in a way, right? Like, it's consumed a lot of information and it's trying to give you a design code that, contemplates all the information that it's digested. And, if there's not more to learn, maybe it does, slow down a little bit. At the same time, I think human beings are improving the average every single day by pushing, right? And we're pushing the models to do more interesting things. We're pushing the designs to be better, and that gets fed in. So I think there's a little bit of a loop that happens through that as well. And so we need to kind of take an active role in making sure the average keeps increasing and improving.
The humans using AI need to push the boundaries, not just the AI model builders, you're saying.
Yeah.
And that will be the loop.
It's still a loop, right?
Still a loop.
I think everything is a loop, the loop, the loop, the loop, the loop, the loop.
Yuhki, thank you. Thank you for chatting through this.
Thank you, Yuhki. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, you know what time it is. Podcasting's most creatively named segment, best and worst,
where we make the case to our producer, Cody, for the best and worst designs of the past month.
And I decide the winner. And I want to say, I don't look up any of the stuff beforehand. I don't look at this part of the document before we record.
I have no idea what they're talking about. I will not look it up after they talk about it.
Sometimes that may be true.
This is a live debate, everybody. The power of the argument wins.
As it should be.
All right, Mark.
All right, best of the month for me comes from Teenage Engineering, everyone's favorite Swedish electronics company. They made an all-clear computer case. So like it looks just like clear plastic, called the Computer 2. They made this to be the world's cheapest computer case. It's one big folded piece of plastic. It looks amazing, semi-transparent. The only thing that annoys me is like they're not selling it. They're like, hey, it's free, but you can't really get it. But we'll release it sometime for free again. So I don't exactly know how the marketing strategy plays out, but yeah, that's it for me.
I call it the jellyfish computer, and I think it's really cute. And it's kind of unfair that you throw a Teenage Engineering product in because they do make really great stuff.
Stacked for myself. So what you got? What do you got?
So my best is actually a film. It's a new documentary from A24 called Architecton, and it's all about rocks. So the film is more or less about what it takes to make concrete. It's not a thrilling watch, I will admit that, and it's kind of pretentious, but it is gorgeous and it is informative and it's kind of sobering. There are these epic shots of a quarry wall crumbling from a blast before the rocks are shipped out to be made into concrete. It's really interesting to watch at this moment, I think, because I feel like there's been a bit of a resurgence or interest in building with actual stone. Concrete is terrible for the environment. Raw stone is an interesting alternative. This film really makes the case for that.
Yeah, the built environment, I think, is the single biggest cause of like CO2 emissions in our world. And it's because of concrete, largely.
Right. And what's interesting is that it just doesn't last as long, right? The lifespan of a concrete building is something like 100 years. And we still have stone buildings that reach back thousands of years.
I mean, my concrete driveway has cracked. So I'm here as a Midwesterner. I do not trust the stuff. Yes, I'm with you.
That's my pick. All right. So what about all the bad stuff from the month?
Well, my worst goes to, we're back in the White House with Tim Cook gifting Donald Trump this wild gold trophy.
That's fair.
This is a scene straight out of North Korea. Right, with Tim Cook just like desperately presenting this object to Trump. I mean, I don't know who designed it. I hope an internal designer at Apple, some poor chained intern to a desk, didn't have to do this. But it's basically like a little glass circle on top. I don't remember what it says. Probably like Trump's the best on top of a chunk of kind of like a gold butt. Like, I don't know exactly what to call this shape.
It says made in USA very prominently.
Made in USA, baby. And it was meant to commemorate Apple bringing production to Kentucky under Trump. Technically, The Verge confirmed that was like already in the works and stuff. But like, it's a big Trump moment, rah, rah. Anyway, really depressing to me. Obviously, I can understand why the CEO of Apple would go and sort of bend the knee to ensure his stockholders would make money and things, but also it feels like, what does wealth matter if you don't have power and you are just bowing to an authoritarian regime?
Yeah, no, this one's going straight onto the mantle in the Oval Office.
No, straight onto the mantle. I mean, if you can get more depressing than that, the floor is yours, Liz.
So mine is not exactly depressing, and I think it might technically be a bit of a stretch in terms of design, but I want to nominate AOL killing its dial-up service as the worst design of the month. So logically, it makes a lot of sense, right? I read somewhere that in 2022, the Census Bureau found that 0.1% of American households use dial-up services. And these are mostly people who live in rural areas where broadband isn't available.
To be fair, by the way, probably the only people still using AOL.
Right. Well, but listen, it makes me a little bit sad. As a kid of the 90s, the beep boop boop boop, like whatever that was.
I've been waiting
like
for you to make the sound this whole time, like the doo 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 doo.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna skip the.
We're going to play the sound so we can see how close or how far off you were.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in my brain, when I do it out loud, I think of beep boop 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 boop. Like it's not the actual sound. I think of Mario. Anyway, but this sound was kind of a soundtrack to at least my life for a little bit.
100%. It was the sound to socializing for a period of time, right?
Exactly. It's a bummer to see it go for good. It sort of shuts the door to a simpler time on the web. And I don't know, it needed to happen. It still feels bad. Mark, did you have an AOL chat name?
I did.
What was it?
I'm a Chicagoan and I was a young man then. So, we had the Bears and stuff in Chicago, a really proud moment in our media history. So I was the man.
All right.
I was like a 10-year-old the man. And with a long series of, apparently there are 3,515 other demands before me first. But then I came in.
Demand like 2,560.
Close enough. Yeah. What about yours?
Mine was a somewhat embarrassing Blue Eyes 519.
Blue Eyes 519.
Can you guess how I got there?
Oof.
Yeah. No. Got blue eyes, birthday 519. A real creative genius from the start. Cody, what about you?
I miss the AOL era. I was an MSN Messenger guy, and it was really boring. Cody N_3.
Are you like a sociopath? That is, I am really reconfiguring who you are as a human after MSN?
Yeah.
Like, are you a narc? Like, what is...
I grew up in rural Minnesota, and that was like the thing. So.
Hey, Mark, MSN had a moment too. MSN for me was after AOL, right? People moved away from AOL. They went to MSN in middle school, and that's where it all went down.
I mean, I feel like there was a time when I was juggling a few different messaging services. So I probably had MSN running like on ADM or something, but I would never say I flat out connected to MSN. I just like, I don't like to associate with people who have,
The three...
I don't even think this is funny. You guys actually feel judged right now. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to the MSN fans in the audience. I love you all.
I'm thinking about just being a socially awkward fourth grader. I thought the 3 was cool because it was my number in basketball. I loved Allen Iverson.
Yeah. Listen, everybody who's listening to this right now, share with us what your screen names are and make us feel better about our own bad choices.
Yeah.
Don't let Blue Eyes down.
Yeah, we dragged our judge enough. Cody, what's your take for this month?
You're both going to get toasted in this too. So let's start with the best. I'm going to start with a question. Have either of you owned a teenage engineering product?
No, I've simply looked at them on the internet.
This is a good question. I almost bought the recorder and I did not. And I'm happy I did not after I read a lot of reviews of it. But that was my most tempted teenage engineering product. So you don't like them?
I want to love this company so much because it looks awesome. I, at one point, did splurge, and I previously owned their OP1 synthesizer sampler, and I kept it for, I swear to God, it was back on eBay in like 3 months. I thought it was so overpriced. It was like the most expensive toy that like an adult or a musician can purchase.
I mean, yes. Yes, it is.
And that's the thing is it's priced like a professional tool and it acts like a toy. They fully lost me when they put out the Field Desk, which is a $1,600 folding table, essentially. And you can buy an $80 tape holder to put your Scotch tape roll on when you're working at your $1,600 table.
I mean, we can debate teenage engineering sort of visions to getting into furniture and furnishings of the high-end market another time, I think, Cody. Let me just counter and say what was appealing to me about this case was that they were actually doing the exact opposite and trying to make something more democratic than they have in the past.
I like it in principle, but I also like when companies offer products that you can buy or like take for free. So I'm going with Architecton. I haven't seen it. I'm really curious about it. A documentary on rock sounds fascinating.
I'll take the W, even if it's just like default. So
it's not even a default. It's like you win in the eyes of giving me a movie recommendation, and that's worth something.
All right.
Wow, good cheat code for future weeks.
Yeah, there you go. And for the worst, I'm going to go with the Tim Cook Trump gift. So you're going to have a W there, Mark. There's nothing that I can add to this discourse other than that I personally think that it sucks too. And it's ugly.
Exactly what an MSN user would say.
Yeah. Okay, roasted.
That's all for today's episode.
Our show is produced by the highly biased Cody Nelson, mixed and sound designed by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen.
Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next month.